chant the invocation to begin the class. I think if next time, Matt, if you're here, we can give you all the details, the pages, the invocation.
Okay.
Okay. So let's do the prayer first. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Punattu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavati Tamastu Mavit Vishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Just for information, the reason we do the invocation is just to tune in our buddhi, our subtle intellect, away from the distractions of our worldly things that we may be doing. So it tunes it into something higher, subtle intellect, which points us to something bigger, that truth, that self, that Atman Brahman. So it's tuning our conscience in to making us aware that we're now beginning to, this morning, learn about something of those eternal principles of life. So we had left off last week on chapter 18. We completed verse 9. And the chapter entitled The Yoga of Liberation Through Renunciation. So the whole of the Gita is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Krishna that taught Arjuna, the student, and Arjuna being a warrior prince who's never lost a battle in his life. He's a leader. And at the 11th hour of a battle that he has to fight, he collapses in a big mess. He's full of emotion, full of insecurity. He can't see straight, think straight. He certainly can't act, because your mental state determines what you do physically. So in that, on a battlefield where he's facing his nearest and dearest, he collapses. And so it is with us, each of us individuals. It's symbolic, the battle, but it's symbolic of our thoughts and desires within us, our negative and positive tendencies, which keep giving us that dilemma of choice, that conflict within us. So it disarms us, and we're not able to face the challenges of life. So the whole philosophy is about how do we manage our minds and our desires, and how do we overcome them so we actually do what we are here to do, fulfill that potential to get to that, our existence, to get to that truth and realize that ultimate. So the whole of the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are giving us the different paths of karma bhakti, jnana yoga, the path of action, knowledge, and devotion. But it's aimed at the person of action. It has that in mind. Arjuna was a warrior, person of action. And so are all we, mostly people of action. We need to resolve our desires, our lower values, by pitching up something bigger, so that the lower generally will fall away. So in this chapter, the yoga of liberation through renunciation, the idea of this word renunciation, as painful as it sounds when you say this word, but actually a blessing in disguise, in the sense that the reality of this word, as it's been so often misconstrued, actually means growth. So growth is when you've pitched up a higher value in life and the lower value naturally falls away, because nobody in their right mind, as this word can sometimes be misconstrued, give up anything. You can't give up anything. You'll never do it. But if you have something bigger in mind, to take up something which focuses your mind on a bigger value, aim, aspiration, you'll naturally slowly become disinterested in perhaps what was a smaller value. They don't play, it falls away. So the whole idea of renunciation is you pitch up something bigger, the lower falls away. So it's a mental attitude. It's not actually ever giving up the action. It's like a renunciation in action, not of the action. So you're never actually giving up your activities. It's purely a mental state. So we were in the beginning talking about who is a sannyasi, who is a tyagi. So the sannyasi is the state of when you have pitched up something high and you become that. A tyagi is the process of your spiritual path where they're renouncing the fruit of action, the result. So it's a starting point, because obviously you can't just drop everything. Your mind won't allow you to drop your action. And if you just decide not to do anything at all, your mind will just be agitated with stress. So you've got to do something. You're propelled naturally to do something. But that doesn't prevent you from having the stress and strain of life. That doesn't mean that you'll meet your challenges in a way that will give you that peace and contentment. So it's the method, a very systematic method of how one evolves through action, having the right mental state. So we had talked about in the last couple of classes who is the threefold division of a tyagi. So who's a sattvic tyagi? So if we eliminate a tyagi being a renunciate and dropping that fruit of action. So a tamasic tyagi, tamasic being that quality in us which is of lethargy, of inertia, laziness, idleness. It's a thought texture within us. It promotes laziness, inertia, idleness. So when we don't have any direction or goal or anything to maneuver us, that lethargy, that procrastination percolates through. Or when we have no knowledge of what to do, tamas, this word, which means all of the words we've been just stating, tamas percolates through, or is there without doing anything. So it's born out of delusion, ignorance, lack of knowledge, lack of information, lack of motivation. It's almost that ignorance is you don't want to know. You'd rather just be in that sloth. So out of delusion, tamasic tyagi. So it's not even though you give up anything, you just don't do anything. You don't feel any need. But in the case of the next step up of the thought quality of a human being is rajas. Rajas is when you pursue activities in a frenzied manner, with a lot of result orientation, with a lot of what can I get out of it. You pursue the material. It's very desire-backed. you've got a craving, a desire to go and get it. And there's nothing wrong to go and get it, but it's the attitude you keep with that. So Rajasic is when it's frenzied. You crave it, you become attached to things. It ruins you in that sense, because though you might get the object of the desire, it keeps you in constant stress. So often you see people in life that they seem to have every object and maybe the best of beings around them, but within themselves, they're not happy. They're still irritated. They're still stressed out. So those objects actually, though others may be aspiring for what that person may have, they are bored with them or neutralized by them or agitated, because inside of them, they're not peaceful, happy, or contented. So that rajas promotes you to gain the object. In fact, it also creates a fear, and you can lose the object of your desire within it. But it never allows you that satisfaction or peace of mind. So often what happens in a Rajasic Tyagi, what happens in a Rajasic Tyagi? Anybody remembering? I'm doing all the work here. Who's been here? Who's the Rajasic Tyagi? What did we discuss? Tyagi meaning relinquishment. The process that we go through, growth. So who's that Rajasic Tyagi? When does one drop the action? What's happening there? Tim?
When you fear the consequence of the action is not worth the effort doing it. It causes suffering and pain.
Because it's suffering and pain. So if something gets too painful, you drop it. If it's troublesome, you drop it. Even if it may be what you're supposed to be doing, you drop it. It's too stressful, you drop it. Can't see the wood for the trees, you drop it because of the stress. That's Rajasic Tyaga. But yet when the trouble dies down, the very same desire will prop up and you'll go for it. But when it rises up, that trouble, you drop it again. So that's the problem with a Rajasic Tyaga, in that attitude of your mind's craving for the result. There's an expectation. It's constantly worried about the past. It never keeps its mind focused in the present, so it's always sapping the energy you have to actually work on anything. Too much trouble, you drop it. Sattvic Tyaga, the highest quality of a human being. Sattvic is that quality or thought texture within you, which is serene, objective, divine, enables you to look at the bigger picture of a higher value. So what's the case of that type of relinquishment? What's happening there? How can we define who is a Sattvic Tyagi? Anyone? What's the famous verse in chapter 6? Verse 1, if anybody remembers. Very famous verse, so one should keep it lodged in their mind. If you take that one verse in actual fact away, you're done, you're good for your life. What does it say? Anyone? Familiar? Vidya?
A Sattvic Tyagi is one who does the job without thinking about the fruits of action. So that's what verse 1 chapter 6 says, Karyam karma karoti yaha.
Karyam karma, doing your obligatory duty. So whoever assesses what you're obliged to do pitches up that bigger value. In actual fact, they're relinquishing the past and the future and just get on with the obligation. Get on with what you ought to do. You figure out what your obligations are in life. And you don't think about what went before and you don't think about the future, but you get on to what you've got to do. Objective. In the bigger picture, you've pitched up that higher value. Karyam karma karoti yaha. So what you've actually done is you've detached sangam, you've detached yourself from the results of your action. You've detached yourself from that craving, just getting on with it. You've got a bigger purpose. Sattva Tyagi. You're pursuing your actions for a purpose to get to the self, the truth. You've dropped that wrong mental attitude. Matt, you have a question?
Yes, since I'm new to this, to your way of looking at this, that you started by saying there's some difference between Tyaga and Sannyasa. And in this verse, it's actually the word sannyasa. So I wonder, or am I remembering incorrectly?
Which verse are you looking at?
The one you was mentioning now in number 6. Maybe I forgot. In that case, I apologize.
No, it's okay. Yes, you can.
See. No, yeah, they say you're both a sannyasi and a yogi. They say that is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
so could you one more time explain the difference between Tyagi and sannyasi and how it works with this verse then?
Great. You've considering you've come the first time, you're asking a apt question, because the first few verses, you're quite right to ask this question. First few verses explain from 1, 2, 3, 4, explain this difference. It's really important to know. So in terms of a tyaga is on the path. Sannyasi has become that state. So they are in a natural state of dispassion. So they're not affected by their activities, they're objective to them. Whereas a Tyagi is in a process of gaining that state. So they're on the spiritual path. So it's, if you understand these words, perhaps, it's the difference between saying, they're words, in fact. You see, you may be dispassionate in one aspect of life, but then in another you have you're very desirous, can't control it. So the sannyasis generally focusing on getting to the self. They have a dispassionate passion. They pursue their activities, but the focus is only to get to the self. Whereas the Tyaga has many desires, and as a first point of call, they need to, in order to evolve, they need to drop the fruit of action, not be focused on the result. So that's the starting point of gaining that solidifying that dispassion, objectivity, another word for it. There's an understanding that everything in the world can't offer them what they are after, yet they've got to pursue the world because they have desires. They've got to go into it. So how do you actually enter into the arena of your world when you've embarked on your spiritual path? You can't just shut it out. It'll still be in your mind. You can't just take yourself off to the mountains. Your thoughts will still be there. There's nobody there. So you've got to you are in the marketplace, wherever you are, whatever your marketplace is. So how do you relate to your world without that stress? The sannyasi is in a position where they're relating to the world because they too have residue desires, less than the Tyagi. But they're in a position to be not affected. They have a dispassion, they have an understanding, a mental attitude, which they're solid in. Whereas the Tyagi is still very much on the path. They're not solid in that state. So the Tyagi is the first step, the sannyasi is the state. And it's to get to, their thought is only to get to the self. But the Tyagi may have lots of different desires there to pursue in their vocation, etc. So the best thing they can do is drop the fruit of action. That's the path. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, very good answer. Thank you.
So we left off on verse 10, or to start verse 10. Vidya.
Na dveshti akushalam karma kushalena anusajjate tyagi sattva samavisto medavi chinna samshayah.
Thanks. Dharma, if you could read the verse.
The Tyagi relinquisher does not hate disagreeable action, nor is he attached to agreeable one. Being pervaded by sattva purity, intelligent, and his doubts cut asunder.
So, in fact, actually from verse 7 to 12, it's explaining all the different aspects of a Tyagi to becoming that sannyasi. So actually from verse 1 to 12, it's on with that. And then from there onwards, he will start the personality, in the sense, the components to action, different aspects to action. So here he's explaining a little bit more about this, the same, in the sense, putting different, adding on different aspects. So he's saying Tyagi doesn't act on likes or dislikes. Why does he say that? Because all the time we are acting on what we like or what we don't like. We might find it agreeable to be non-punctual and not agreeable to be punctual, or vice versa. But we act on what we like and not what we don't like. So here, this one is not attached to what's agreeable or disagreeable in their process. They're working on that. They're not acting on likes or dislikes. They're acting on something else. So if you keep both of those aside, what you like and what you don't like, naturally we have certain tendencies because of our own vasanas, our own mental makeup, our innate nature. We can't avoid those things. But what do we need to do? We need to keep those aside by doing karyam karma, just doing our obligation. We need to put them aside when they come in. So Tyagi doesn't act on likes and dislikes. It says here, this one's, it's pervaded by medavi. A capacity, meda, is it's like a intelligence a flashback. Medha Sakti, we sometimes say, is the capacity to flash back to a situation. It's like an intuition. Flash back to a situation of the past and utilize that information for the present, which impacts the future. So you use it, you take from the past or what your inherent knowledge is and use it for what's the future? It's a perception. Medha Sakti, it flashes in your mind. You put 2 and 2 together. So the Tyagi is able to do that. So the more you delve into within and into this type of knowledge, you get a bigger picture of what's going on. So you're able to position yourself better so you can flash back to what it ought to be and what you've got to move forward with, rather than getting entangled in your likes and dislikes, which will happen. But if you feed yourself with knowledge, you open up that potential to think, it's that. It's like an aha moment. It's that, it's not this. Leave this aside, get on with that. The only problem is our likes and dislikes are extremely powerful. We don't even know when we're doing something we like and we don't like, what we're avoiding. Because from early childhood to our teens, our parents, our partners, the environment, push forward through all sorts of means. We're collecting what we like and avoiding what we don't like. So it really, there's a pressure to dissipate our energies into unproductive channels rather than pitch up something which directs us to something bigger, greater. So your energies get neutralized by the object of your desire. So you can't blame any scenario in the sense, because there's so many different things hitting your mind, and your parents encourage it from childhood, and your well-wishers encourage it, give you gifts or encourage you to do things that you like and go, and your friends go with you into the places that you want to like or discourage you. So there's a constant focus on I like this, don't like this. The advertising is right in your face, if not via outward means, but by people who surround you, the pressure to conform to certain things. I'm sure you can all give examples of how one does things opposed to what they feel they ought to do. One lazes rather than exercises. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. One eats the wrong foods rather than knowingly, even when you know, just have a bit of that, just a little bit. One keeps company which you know that destroys your sanity. That's a little bit more trickier because it's subtler. You watch the TV or the screen or whatever, constantly scrolling or various things. There's so many. You've now got what is it? The latest. What's the latest gimmick that we're all tuning into? Anybody? I wonder if you're thinking the same as me. Yes, that. But what can that do?
AI, maybe?
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
So we all know about it. I haven't even said a word. That's how it's training you to go with your likes, dislikes. Hey, it could write the whole, I believe I've not tried it. I dare not try it. It's scary. But I'm sure if I put in the right words, it could write the whole class on the Bhagavad Gita. The problem is, what's the problem with that? wonder if anybody spotted what's the problem with that.
Making us completely dhamasic, so completely void of using our intellect or own minds in any way, dumbing us really,
Yeah.
and numbing us.
So you might, it's absolute rajas. You can use it for perhaps, I'm sure, all of these things, anything in the world, it can be used or abused, but there's a potential for it to make us tamasic, lazy, not do our own work. Spiritual evolution, you've got to look within yourself to clear your own desires, refine yourself. If something else does it for you, you still are remaining with those thoughts within yourself. You've not got rid of them. You might temporarily give yourself a fix. It's like a band-aid. You might temporarily got the job done, but you haven't devised from you that, drawn out from you, educated yourself. The Latin word to educate is to lead out, not to stuff in. You can't escape your obligations. You got to do it yourself. Spiritual path has to be done oneself. You can't delegate it out. You can't make a yoga master do your exercises. You got to do the exercises if you want to be fit. You can't. If I read the Bhagavad Gita, I gain what it is. And if I think and reflect on it, I gain it. If you do it, you do. But simply having the book doesn't make you a spiritual person, or whatever book it is. It may not be the Bhagavad Gita of universal values. It doesn't really matter what it is. So, likes and dislikes, when things are made easy for us, in a sense, seemingly easy, we like to go for them. It seems pleasurable in the beginning. There's a verse we're coming to shortly. Pleasure in the beginning, nectar in the beginning, poison, vishayam, in the end. Sattvic happiness, poison in the beginning, it feels like that. But amrutam, nectar in the end. You've got to have that meda sakti, dhyana to see it. There's a lot of things to perceive, to see that. So not writing on likes and dislikes is to be objective. Medavi, that brilliance, to not have your eye on the future or the past. You can connect the perception of the past to the future. There's a flash of intuition. Which enables you to program what you've got to do. When one doesn't act on likes and dislikes, it mentions here, China asamshaya, the doubt disappears. You gain a clarity. You refine yourself. So at the physical level, you're acutely aware of being in good health, fit. At the material level, you consider what your needs are, and you make sure you can pursue what you need. At the emotional level, you refine your thoughts, your feelings. So there's a love, a devotion, not attached. There's an identification. It's not what I can get out of you, it's what I can put back. There's a difference in feeling. If you don't cater to me, doesn't mean to say I won't cater to you or the cause. But an attachment, that feeling, if you don't love me, I can't love you. finished. There's nothing in that love really. So as emotional, at the intellectual level, your thoughts are making that distinction between what is real, what is unreal, what is transient, what is permanent. You're after permanence. You never let it go until you get there. We're after, our existence is to get to something which fulfills us, paripurna, satisfies us. Yet we are all conditioned to seek something which is temporary. We think we're going to get it, a little bit more money, a little bit more love, a little bit more. There's nothing to say one shouldn't have any of those things, but it's not to be dependent on it. That's the idea. So a Tyagi doesn't operate on likes, dislikes. Guru.
Paraji, quick question. Tyagi, I mean Sattvic Tyagi. Is it always necessary that the Sattvic Tyagi is always on the spiritual path of self-realization? Would it always be the case?
They may not know this word self-realization, but they're after something which is of permanence, something which fulfills them, something which enables them to identify with the whole. Because they don't rest content. All the traits are after that. You may, in the material field, give up the fruit of action in your pursuit, but you want something out of it, yes, in order to pursue it. So that makes it rajasic. When you don't want anything out of it, you've got an ideal which is bigger. That changes the focus. So yes, tyag. Otherwise it's a rajasic tyag, which is not really a tyag.
For some reason in the back of my mind, when we're talking about Sattvic Tyag, I was thinking of this character called Karna in Mahabharata, who is very popular for the acts of sacrifice without really expecting any sort of returns. But would that be a Sattvic Tyag? So I'm not sure.
I need to just think about the context of the whole. Yes, in a sense, but he's fighting a battle, so he's got a motive.
Yeah.
Vidya, you wanted to add?
I think what in this case, Karnan's Tyag was Sattvic Tyag. Unfortunately, it was on the wrong side of the line. He was in the side of the Kauravas rather than the Pandavas. And he was doing it out of debt. He felt very indebted to the Kauravas for recognizing him. He was claimed to be a fatherless child, and he was not considered to be of a princely Kshatriya clan, and therefore he was recognized by Kauravas for all the wrong reasons, and Karna was just repaying. So in that sense, yes, it was Sattvic because he was repaying his debt to Kauravas, but in the grand scheme of things, he was on the wrong side of the line. And that's the irony. But saying that, Krishna did absolve Karna of all his past actions. Krishna claims in one part of Mahabharata where he says, I am responsible for everything that you have undergone. So, I mean, many of us are in that predicament where we do the right thing, but unfortunately we are caught on the wrong side of the line very often. It's a moral predicament that we face day in and day out.
So as long as you're in a particular environment and you see, this is a tyagi. A tyagi may have many desires to yet fulfill. So they could drop the fruit of action to refine, do the desire, but you don't want anything out of it. So you are pursuing it. Dronacharya was on the opposite side, the guru of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the two warring factors of righteousness and unrighteousness is symbolic of. And he was an evolved spiritual Kshatriya aspirant. So as Vidya quite rightly pointed out, he's just doing his duty. He didn't have any choice of what side he was on. So he pursued, as far as his evolution was concerned, he had to fight the battle in whatever on that side. As a soldier, you don't get the choice. But at the same time, your actions have, a cause has an effect. So somewhere you've got to pay a price for certain things. If you're absolved, it's only because you are putting yourself in a direction where you absolve itself. You're focusing on something which is universal truth. Your identity is going that direction, identification. So that absolves you. Nobody's going to do it for you. The story says it like that to encourage us. Krishna is symbolic of the self. You've got to do it for yourself. So is that sattvic or rajasic? If there's a craving for the result of action, if it's troublesome, keep to the definitions. It helps. If it's not in the direction of the self, the truth, the Atman, Brahman, whatever you want to call it, that absolute, that universal value, then it's opposite to sattva. But you could be doing something very worldly, but your focus is on something higher. That makes it different. That's how it is. Doesn't matter in yoga or boga, is the Bhaja Govindam states. Yogaratova, bogaratova. So he's saying if you're in the material world, pursuing acquisition, wealth, it's where your mind is. Or if you're on the spiritual path, it doesn't make a difference. It actually makes a difference. Where's your mind? It's not what you're doing. It's where's your mind going. Which will make it, because you'll refine it if your focus is on the higher. You may be in some mess, but you maneuver it out because the focus is on the high. It's like the story of the, in your childhood, you must have heard the story of the hare and the tortoise. Everybody heard that story? The tortoise is a slow, a sluggish creature. The hare thinks it can win the race, speedily goes across. The hare stops, I think he stops for a rest or something or another. I don't remember the exact story. And the tortoise slowly, slowly plods on, wins the race. So his direction is in one direction, whereas the hare gets distracted. Misses the boat. So it's not what you're doing, it's what your direction is. You'll get out of it fast and speedy if your focus is on somewhere higher. So you could be doing something which seems noble, but if the focus is in the wrong direction, it's not useful. It becomes rajasic. Even a noble action could be doing something charitable. It's not charitable, focus in the wrong direction. You'll be doing something which helps millions. Perhaps it does on the outcome, but you don't spiritually evolve. Or you could be doing something which seemingly seems indulgent, but if your focus is in the right direction, you get out of it. So it's when your focus is not interested in what, there's an understanding of what the world has to offer you is transient, and you're after something transcendental, permanent. So you can get disconnected from, in our dreams, when we wake up, we are disconnected from that dream because we have the wisdom to know that that dream's not real. So the moment you pitch up something higher in this waking state, you get disconnected from the lower value. So being entangled in that world is difficult in the beginning because you've got your families, you've got your partners, you've got your world around you, your people all around you. You're holding them tight. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you've got to entertain that thought. What did Nachiketas say? What have you got to entertain? Anybody know? Remember, Nachiketas, the child who went to learn Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of the self, from Lord Yama, Lord of Death. What was the famous statement? I think I've told you the example a few times. So what's the famous words? Anyone? Gotta keep at the back of your mind. Just when you think it's that. Neti. Anybody know neti? What does it mean? That.
It is naiti, not this.
Not this, not this. How many you think it's that? Not that. You tell yourself in the back of the mind, minutes giving exactly what you think it should. It's not that. If you accept it is what you think it is, you're making yourself complacent. So every day, whatever you see, if something works out perfectly, if something looks corrupt, it's not that. Keep it at the back of the mind. One needs to keep that medhavi, that perception of the past, connecting it to the future of that picture, to work in the present, to understand it's not that. Neti, don't get stuck with it. Neti. Let's read the verse. And Dharma, if you'd like to.
The Sattvika Tyagi, true relinquisher, executes obligatory function without bringing in past attachment or craving for future result. He clearly perceives his role in the world, his routine and special duties in life, performs them detachedly, functions with his intellect attuned to a high ideal, and not yielding to likes and dislikes of his mind. He would not avoid an action just because it is unpleasant to him, nor court what is pleasant. A Tyagi maintains an august indifference towards agreeable and disagreeable aspects of life while he fulfills his worldly obligation. A true Tyagi possesses the highest human quality, Sattvika Guna. As a Medhavi, he maintains a perfect memory and an alert intellect to flash back to it whenever the situation warrants. His intellectual clarity helps him choose a definite goal in life. Delusion and doubt do not disturb his pursuit of the goal. He maintains a smooth passage until he reaches it.
So often we say, you got to clip your past, clip your future. Don't think about the future. Don't drop the fruit of action. Drop that anxiety of the past, or maybe creeping up. I've got to do this, that. Here he's saying, use medhavi. Take whatever that past knowledge is and utilize it. So you don't want to take the negative aspect. You utilize your past, understand what it is that you've got to connect together, that perception, to move yourself forward. Medhavi. It's about the only time you're supposed to take that past, as it were. Tim.
Is the term Tyagi a descriptive term as well as an analytic one? What I mean by that is I hear characters described as a sannyasi, Would you ever describe someone as a Tyagi?
The thing about it is you could, but you don't know what's in somebody's mind. You know, it's a path.
But is
So
it used as a descriptor of somebody?
yes, actually, sometimes you say he's a Tyagi.
Thank you.
But you have to be ahead of that to say it. You see, it's like saying he's a yogi. But if you're a jnani, you can say that. But if you're also a yogi, you won't know that. You might know in words, but one doesn't know what's actually in somebody's mind. You know of yourself, hey. You know where you're solid in certain things, and you know where you're wavering in others. So you're on a route. So you understand yourself as Tyagi, or as your aspiration to be a sannyasi. But there comes a stage where that's what it is. And you see a person in their route dropping the fruit of action, just in the attitude you see it. So can you say that? Yeah, I guess you can. You can describe that person or yourself or whatever, one or the other. You can use this description. 11. We have a couple of minutes. Maybe we just chant the verse. Read the verse.
Nahi deha bridha sakyam tyaktum karma nasheshatah yastu karma palatyagi satyagityabi adiyate.
Rina, if you could read the verse.
Verily, it is not possible for the embodied to relinquish actions totally, but he who relinquishes fruit of action is called a Tyagi.
Okay, so I think rather than go further here, he's talking about Tyagi until 12. So the next couple of verses in next class, we'll get onto this. We've got a couple of minutes if there's anybody who has any questions. Otherwise, we'll finish. Guru.
Just on the reverse, I think of what we had been speaking. Is yogi always a Tyagi then?
Yogi is just a general word, unless it's in context. See, all of these words you might use: jnani, tyagi, sannyasi, yogi, etc. They're all words put into certain contexts mean different things. So in chapter 5, it just is talking about who's a yogi, who's a sannyasi. It talks about who's a jnani. It makes distinctions there. So it's contextual. So essentially the word yoga means to join. So anybody who is actively joining is a yogi. So you could be a sannyasi, you could be a tyagi, you could, your aspiration, your path is to join with truth. But that doesn't mean they're exactly the same. In chapter 5, he's making distinction. A yogi is at the beginning of the spiritual path. Then yogi, it's a progression, yogi, sannyasi, jnani, in 5. Yeah. Meaning all it's doing is explaining the different stages. So in that context, it's saying a yogi is one who's got loads of desires, but has pitched up in their mind they want to be on a spiritual path. Could mean that in that context. In another context, we're all yogis, never mind what stage we're at. So what one has to understand whenever reading any type of scriptural text is the context, because in context can mean one thing and another. All of it means joining back to the self. Yeah, the word yoga is to join back, presuming that we're separated from something that we've got to join back. So it depends how you use it. Might not be helpful to tell you that. That's where. So not to get caught up with the particular words per se, but more to examine and apply the spirit of it, the essence of it. What are we after? What am I doing? What happens if I do that? That's where I can push, say in this case of a Tyagi, I can renounce, I can drop the fruit of action, but I can't drop that desire yet. So let me try that. And then suddenly some things transform where you're not interested in them anymore. You're not even thinking of dropping the fruit because you don't have any interest in it anymore. So it's progression. So we've got to take in, absorb the essence, the spirit of it. So many times people misinterpret these words. I'm not saying you are at all. I'm just giving it, you gave an example and just sort of putting forward and make a mismatch, a real mess of what something is saying and misinterpret. You know, renunciation in action, not of action, but often it's misconstrued as to drop the action altogether, give up. So it's all contextual understanding. Just understand yogi means join back. Let's go from there. Then it's contextual. Thank you.
Thank you.